Hi, Mystery Recapped here. Today, I'm going to explain a horror sci-fi movie, a Cronenbergian classic called The Fly. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. The movie opens with a party thrown by Bartok Industries, a leading institution dedicated to creating the next generation of scientific inventions. At the center of the party, investigative journalist Veronica Quaife asks Seth Brundle, a brilliant and eccentric inventor, about his upcoming project. He confidently says that his invention will change the course of human history. However, Veronica is not at all impressed by the lofty talk and asks him to be more specific. Instead of answering her questions straight, Seth starts flirting. He asks her to visit his lab, where he can explain his work in detail. He also claims that his invention is more important than any other story. Veronica is desperate for a big story to boost her career, so she hesitantly agrees to come with him. After a short drive, they arrive at Seth's apartment, which is in a shady neighborhood. He then finally reveals his invention, which he has named as telepods. These are two phone booth type structures that are connected to each other through a computer. Seth explains that this setup can teleport any substance placed in the first booth to the second one. To demonstrate the process, he asks her to give either a piece of jewelry or clothing. Veronica flirtatiously takes off her stocking and hands it to him. This'll work pretty good, but it'd be better if it was your bra. He then puts it in the first telepod, then comes back to his computer to analyze the physical makeup of the stocking. Seconds later, Seth initiates the teleportation process, which makes the stocking vanish from the first telepod and reappear inside the second one. This shocks Veronica, and she suddenly realizes the massive implications that the telepods can have. The two then talk about his invention, during which she reveals that she's recording their conversation. Seth is annoyed by this, as he doesn't want the telepods to be made public yet. However, the stubborn journalist says that it's her duty to break this news to the world. Hence, she forcibly takes the tape back to the headquarters of Particle magazine, the organization she works for. Veronica sits down with the chief editor, Stathis, and the duo listen to the recording. She seems very excited about the whole news piece, but Stathis has a different take. He thinks that Seth is using scientific terminologies and tricks to make the invention seem bigger than what it actually is. Just as the two are about to get into an argument, Seth also arrives at the office. The witty editor then excuses himself, leaving Veronica alone to deal with the scientist. In the following scene, they sit down for lunch at a local restaurant. Seth reveals that the booths can only teleport lifeless objects, which is why he needs more time to work on them. But the stupid journalist once again refuses to listen, as she's adamant on publishing the story. With no other option left, Seth offers her a very attractive proposition. If she doesn't publish the story now, he will allow her to shadow him throughout the remainder of his work on the telepods. That way, she can come up with a whole book on what is guaranteed to be the most important invention in the history of mankind. Veronica loves the idea, as it could make her a celebrity, so she immediately accepts. That night, when she returns back to her apartment, Stathis is taking a shower in her bathroom. It is then revealed that the two dated some time ago, and he is still interested in having a casual relationship with her. However, Veronica shuts down all the talk of hookups and asks why he's here.
Thought it was obvious, babe. I'm taking my dong out and putting water on it.
Stathis claims that he might have been wrong about Seth. Earlier that afternoon, he did some research and found out that at 20 years of age, Seth was part of a team that were on the verge of winning the Nobel Prize for Physics. Veronica is highly intrigued by the revelation, but she pretends not to care. She then ejects him from the apartment, saying she wants to be alone. The following day, Veronica begins her work of documenting Seth as he works on the telepods. She records while he analyzes the chemical makeup of a baboon in an attempt to teleport it. This is the first time he is testing the daring invention with a live organism. No one knows about the project he's working on, but somehow he secured a baboon. Unfortunately, the experiment does not work, and the baboon is reduced to a boiling piece of flesh, leaving Seth angry and disappointed at himself. But not everything goes bad for him, as later that night, Veronica continues to make flirtatious advancements. The two end up kissing each other and ultimately making love. Who could resist that chest hair? After the intimate moment, Seth tries to get comfortable in bed, but ends up rolling over a transmitter that bruises his back. Veronica carefully peels out the metal equipment from his back and kisses his body all over. In the heat of the moment, she remarks that muscles drive women crazy. Suddenly, Seth's eyes light up, and he finally realizes the mistake he's making with the telepods. Good Good thing she said that ridiculous line. He then gets out of bed and explains that the machine works by disintegrating the object in booth A and then precisely reintegrating it in booth B. However, because of her remark about flesh, he realized that he had never coded the computer program to accurately analyze the genetic makeup of muscle. This is why the telepods could not work with living beings, as the program was recreating its own version of flesh with limited information. While Seth sits down to make necessary adjustments to his program, Veronica goes out downtown. Unbeknownst to her, Stathis has been following her ever since she kicked him out of her apartment. He soon confronts her in a clothing store while she's buying a new jacket for Seth. This makes Stathis jealous, and he accuses her of sleeping with a random guy. He also begs her to come back to him, but Veronica angrily dismisses him, saying she can sleep with whoever she wants to. Back at the apartment lab, Veronica records as Seth finally manages to teleport a baboon from the first booth to the second. Where does he keep getting baboons from? It is a historic achievement that will redefine the way humans travel, and the two excitedly celebrate with champagne. Later, while Seth is ordering takeaway food, Veronica notices a parcel from Particle magazine on his table. She opens it, only to find the potential cover for the upcoming edition of their magazine, a portrait of Seth Brundle and his path-breaking invention. This makes Veronica realize that Stathis is planning to publish the report before her. Enraged, she excuses herself from the lab and rushes to her office. Upon reaching it, Veronica confronts Stathis about trying to steal her hard work. She also threatens him not to go ahead, or else she'll make him regret it. But instead of acting like a man, Stathis breaks down in desperation. He reveals that the only reason he's doing this is to pull her away from Seth. Stathis hopes that if the story is published, she will no longer have to be in regular contact with Seth, and perhaps their relationship can be rekindled. Although Veronica shoots down any idea of getting back with him, she promises to remain his friend. This makes Stathis a bit happy. Bullshit. And he agrees to drop the story until she comes up with the complete report. In the meantime, Seth begins to connect the dots and finally discovers that Stathis is Veronica's ex-boyfriend. He then gets drunk and makes up scenarios in his head where Veronica and Stathis are having coitus behind his back. Fueled by anger and alcohol, he neglects all the safety protocols, takes off his shirt,
Oh man.
and gets into one of the booths to try to teleport himself. Seth does not realize that a housefly has flown into the booth along with him. The program is then initiated, and both specimens are analyzed by the computer. But seconds later, only Seth gets teleported into the second booth. Later that evening, Veronica returns to his apartment and finds him asleep. She kisses him awake and apologizes for leaving so abruptly. A dazed Seth reveals that he used the telepod on himself because he was drunk and upset. Before she can reply to anything, he asks if she's still in a relationship with Stathis. Veronica reassures him that they broke up a long time ago, but admits that he's still in love with her. After convincing Seth that she only loves him, she laments about not being in the lab when he teleported himself. However, Seth reveals that he taped the whole event for her to see. Was your shirt off in the tape?
Oh yeah, it was. It was definitely off, yeah.
The two then patch up and share a kiss before going to sleep together. The following morning, Seth wakes up feeling incredibly energetic and agile. He goes straight from the bed to the kitchen and starts doing handstands on a chair. Furthermore, he jumps to grab a bar and effortlessly does several pull-ups, showing his heightened agility and strength. Veronica just stands there watching as she is completely spellbound by his physical capabilities. Later, she notices odd hair on his back, growing from the bruise he got a few days ago. She gets a pair of scissors to cut them while Seth eats ice cream, demonstrating his increased sugar intake. He explains that his new abilities are the result of the teleportation rearranging his atoms. Suddenly, Seth grabs Veronica and insists that she get teleported as well so she can experience how he feels. He is uncharacteristically pushy and drags her to the telepods. However, Veronica gets scared and backs out of the process, causing him to yell at her. Seeing this unusual behavior, she concludes that something went wrong when he teleported himself, but he pays no attention to this. Instead, he declares that she's not worth his time and storms out to find someone else to be his partner. Seth then goes to a bar where he notices an attractive woman closely watching two men locked in an arm wrestling match. He challenges the winner of the match and ends up easily defeating him. This is enough to impress the woman, and Seth jumps on the opportunity to ask her out for dinner. She agrees, and the two end up spending most of the night hopping from one bar to the next. Late that night, Seth takes her back to the apartment, and the two end up making love. However, once again, he starts forcing his partner to try out his telepod, and that's not a euphemism. The woman diverts the topic by seducing him for another round of lovemaking. Just then, Veronica arrives at the house, prompting the woman to run away from there. Seth accuses her of being jealous, but she asserts that he has changed. Veronica points out his altered appearance and the horrible stench from his skin. She then reveals that she had the hairs from his back analyzed, and they were identified as insect hairs. But Seth continues to insist that he's not sick and tries to prove it by breaking one of the wooden pillars in his apartment. He then angrily throws Veronica out of his apartment, breaking her heart. Following this, Seth goes to his bathroom and checks himself in the mirror, noticing that his face is in fact changing. He tries to shave the few tufts of hair growing on his cheek, but the razor hurts him. He then bites his fingernail, and it pulls out rather easily. Bewildered, he squeezes his fingertip, and strange white liquid spurts out from it. This finally makes Seth realize that something is wrong with him.
That's not supposed to come out of there.
Next, he checks the computer's report of his teleportation and sees that it recorded 2 separate columns of elements. He then checks the genetic sequence and finally discovers that a fly was inside the pod when he teleported. In a shocking twist, the teleportation led him to fuse with the insect on the genetic level, completely recreating his DNA. Several days pass, and Seth locks himself indoors without contacting anyone. Finally, after a month, he musters up the courage and calls Veronica, admitting that his condition has gotten much worse. But he has now run out of ideas and wants to see her. A few hours later, Veronica arrives at his apartment and finds Seth in a deteriorated state. His skin is covered in rashes, and he uses 2 canes to walk. He knows that his deterioration is growing faster and shares that a fly got into the pod when he teleported. As a result, the program could not separate the 2 sets of genetic makeups and ended up mixing them together. A devastated Veronica cries as Seth reveals that currently his cells have developed an aggressive form of cancer and he'll eventually disintegrate. She hugs him awkwardly, despite Seth telling her not to touch him out of the fear of contamination, but he soon starts crying as well, begging her to help him. The next day, Veronica reveals everything to Stathis, begging him to help her boyfriend. The latter agrees, but he wants to see a video of Seth first so that he can plan the next move. Following this, Veronica returns to Seth's apartment, only to find him crawling on the ceiling like an insect. He theorizes that he is slowly becoming a hybrid creature that is neither human nor insect, and refers to it as brundlefly. Furthermore, he has started to exhibit fly-like characteristics, such as vomiting digestive enzymes onto his food in order to dissolve it, and the ability to cling to walls and ceilings. After recording all his daily activities, Veronica returns with the tape to Particle Magazine headquarters. Meanwhile, Seth comes to realize that he is losing his human reason and compassion, and is now being driven by primitive impulses. Attempting to find a cure for his condition, he installs a new fusion program into the telepod computer. He hopes to dilute the fly genes in his body, but for this, he will need to fuse with pure human DNA. On the other hand, Veronica learns that she is pregnant with Seth's baby, but she cannot be sure if the child was conceived before or after his fateful teleportation. She reveals this to Stathis, who suggests she should talk to Seth before taking any further steps. The two then head to his apartment, and Veronica proceeds to reveal the news of her pregnancy. But before she can say anything, Seth urges her to go away as he has become very dangerous. An emotionally distraught Veronica then returns back outside and tells Stathis that she could not reveal the news of her pregnancy. Unbeknownst to them, Seth overhears them talk from the roof of his apartment and realizes that they are going to abort his baby. This enrages him so much that he abducts Veronica before she can get an abortion. He takes her to his lab and begs her to carry the child to term, since it could potentially be the last remnant of his untainted humanity. But Veronica refuses, afraid that the child will be a hideous mutant. Meanwhile, Stathis breaks into the lab with a shotgun, attempting to rescue his crush. A fight then breaks out between the two, and the fly monster ends up dissolving Stathis's hand with his corrosive vomit. But before he can finish him off, Veronica intervenes. Seth then reveals his desperate last-ditch plan to Veronica. He will use the telepods to fuse himself, Veronica, and their unborn child together into one entity so that they can be the ultimate family. While frantically resisting Seth's efforts to drag her into the telepod, Veronica accidentally tears off his jaw. The pain caused by this triggers his final transformation into a complete monstrous combination of man and insect. The creature traps Veronica inside the first telepod, then steps into the next telepod. However, the wounded Stathis manages to sever the power cables connected to Veronica's telepod, allowing her to escape unharmed. Just as Seth breaks out of his telepod, the fusion process process is activated. In a shocking turn of events, the hideous creature is gruesomely fused with chunks of metal and other components from the telepod itself. Seth is now severely injured, and he silently begs Veronica to end his suffering. She hesitates for a moment, but then grabs Stathis' shotgun. The movie ends as she pulls the trigger, ending the life of her ex-lover before falling to her knees in anguish. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.